Picture the Garden of Eden not as a serene paradise but as a divine citadel, its sacred ground scarred by a cosmic war waged before humanity's first dawn. The secrets buried in ancient texts are about to unravel everything you thought you knew about Genesis. We've been taught that the Garden of Eden was the cradle of creation, a pristine haven where humanity's story began in perfect innocence. But what if this narrative conceals a deeper truth? What if Eden was not a peaceful sanctuary but a divine fortress, built on the ruins of a celestial battlefield, its soil hiding the echoes of a war fought before time began? This revelation, drawn from ancient rabbinic writings and the overlooked timeline of the Book of Jubilees, will challenge your understanding of Genesis. Adam was not the first to walk that land. His role was far greater than tending a garden. He was a sentinel, a divinely appointed king tasked with guarding a sacred outpost reclaimed from a primordial darkness that predated humanity. This is not a simple story of temptation but a saga of invasion, where the serpent didn't merely slither into a garden. It stormed a divine stronghold. Adam's fall wasn't the beginning of a spiritual war. It was the loss of a critical battle in a conflict far older than mankind. This truth, so profound and complex, was deliberately buried by later religious councils, who favored a simpler narrative of sin over the intricate reality of a cosmic struggle. If you've ever sensed that the Bible holds deeper mysteries, you're not alone. We're about to unearth evidence hidden for centuries, preserved in texts that challenge conventional teachings and invite us to reconsider the very foundations of our faith. Before we step through the guarded gates of the true Eden, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we uncover what was truly lost that day. In Genesis 1 verse 28, God commands Adam to subdue the earth. Why would a perfect, untouched creation require such an act? The Hebrew word kabash is a military term, meaning to conquer, dominate, or tread underfoot. You don't subdue a tranquil garden. You subdue a rebellious territory. This single word is a clue pointing to a story that predates the sixth day of creation. To understand its significance, we must explore the broader context of Scripture. The Book of Job offers a breathtaking glimpse into this forgotten era. In chapter 38, God asks Job, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation, when the morning stars sang and all the sons of God rejoiced?" Pause and reflect. Before humanity was formed from dust, other beings, the sons of God, witnessed the world's dawn. Who were these ancient entities and what did they see? Ancient texts, long sidelined from mainstream teachings, suggest they beheld more than a peaceful creation. They witnessed a celestial rebellion, a war that scarred the cosmos and plunged parts of the earth into shadow. These texts, such as the Book of Enoch and certain rabbinic commentaries, describe a conflict that reshaped the heavens and left the earth in a state of chaos. A darkness that Genesis 1 verse 2 hints at when it describes the earth as without form and void. This perspective transforms our understanding of Eden. It wasn't merely a paradise but a fortress of light, established in a world reclaimed from darkness. Adam was no simple caretaker. He was its appointed ruler, its first line of defense, tasked with maintaining God's authority over a land wrested from an ancient enemy. The serpent, fully aware of Eden's strategic importance, didn't tempt a man. It besieged a throne, aiming to disrupt a divine plan. To deepen this understanding, let's explore the ancient texts that troubled early Hebrew scholars. The Book of Jubilees, often called the Lesser Genesis, provides a timeline that hints at vast epochs and angelic activity before Adam's creation. This text, preserved in Ethiopian Orthodox traditions and referenced by early Jewish scholars, suggests that the earth God reshaped in Genesis 1 was not a blank canvas but a territory under enemy occupation. Eden, according to these traditions, was a divine sanctuary, a holy embassy planted on reclaimed soil, a beacon of light in a world still haunted by a past rebellion. This explains why the land needed subduing. It was a spiritual and physical reclamation project, a divine mission to restore order where chaos once reigned. Consider the implications of this narrative. Eden's creation was not a whimsical act but a deliberate counteroffensive in a war that began before humanity. The Genesis account, therefore, may not narrate the absolute beginning of creation but a divine restoration, a new dawn on battle-worn ground. To further illustrate, let's examine Genesis 3. When Adam and Eve are exiled, who guards Eden's gates? Cherubim wielding a flaming sword. Why would a mere garden require such formidable military-grade protection? These cherubim were not gardeners. They were warriors, resuming a post-Adam abandoned, guarding a critical territory in the ongoing war between light and shadow. This imagery is striking. Cherubim, described in Ezekiel as multi-faced beings of immense power, stationed at Eden's entrance, suggest a stronghold of divine significance, not a simple orchard. This detail alone challenges the traditional view of Eden as a peaceful garden, pointing instead to its role as a strategic outpost in a cosmic conflict. Why, then, isn't this narrative taught in every church? Why has it been obscured for millennia? The answer lies in its complexity and the historical context of early religious communities. Early church leaders and rabbinic scholars faced the monumental task of unifying a faith for millions, most of whom lacked access to complex texts or the ability to study them. A story of a pre-Adamic war, with celestial rebellions and a reclaimed world, was deemed too intricate, too burdensome. It risked creating confusion or fear among believers. Instead, a simpler narrative of temptation and sin was prioritized, easier to teach and control. Texts like the Book of Enoch and Jubilees, which held these deeper truths, were sidelined, not because they were false, but because they were considered too mysterious for the average believer. During the councils that finalized the biblical canon, such as the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, decisions were made to streamline scripture, focusing on narratives that could unify diverse communities. The truth wasn't erased. It was buried, preserved in apocryphal texts and mystical commentaries for those who knew where to look. The serpent's true identity deepens this narrative. The Book of Enoch, revered by early Christians and quoted in the New Testament, Jude 1 verses 14 to 15, speaks of the watchers, celestial beings, the sons of God, from Job, tasked with overseeing the primordial world. A faction, led by a prideful entity, rebelled not just against God but against creation itself. This was the first war, not of flesh but of light versus shadow, order versus chaos. It scarred the cosmos and cast the earth into the darkness described in Genesis 1 verse 2. The world wasn't created void. It became void, a battlefield under rebellious spirits. Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14 provide further clues, describing a magnificent angelic being, a cherub who once walked in the original Eden, the mountain of God, before his fall. This dethroned prince, often identified as Lucifer, returned to his former domain, not to deceive a woman but to overthrow a king and reclaim what he believed was his. This wasn't a mere temptation. It was a coup, a calculated strike to disrupt God's restoration. The serpent's strategy was not random. It targeted the heart of God's plan, aiming to destabilize the divine order established in Eden. This omission of a primordial war is perhaps the greatest cover-up in spiritual history. Without it, Adam's story is reduced to a moral lesson about disobedience. With it, his role is magnified. He was the first human king in a divine stronghold, tasked with defending a world wrested from an ancient foe. His failure wasn't merely personal. It was the loss of a strategic outpost, allowing darkness to creep back. To expand on this, consider the theological implications. Adam's role as a king aligns with the biblical theme of humanity's dominion over creation. Genesis 1 verse 26. This dominion was not just about stewardship but about governance in a contested realm. The serpent's attack was a direct challenge to this authority, seeking to undermine God's newly appointed ruler. The Book of Jubilees adds further context, suggesting that angelic beings operated in the world long before Adam, some of whom fell into rebellion, creating the chaos God sought to restore. These texts, though not canonical in most Christian traditions, were studied by early Jewish and Christian communities, indicating their historical significance. This hidden history doesn't weaken faith, it fortifies it. It answers lingering questions. Why was a serpent in a perfect garden? Why does God use military language for creation? Why is the world locked in an ancient spiritual battle? The traditional story leaves these as paradoxes. The revealed truth makes them evidence of a grander conflict. God's plan wasn't just to save humanity from one mistake, but to reclaim all creation from an ancient enemy. This war is the foundation of your faith, reframing your purpose on earth. The struggles you face, the darkness in the world, they're part of a conflict older than humanity. This knowledge magnifies Scripture, showing Christ's sacrifice as the decisive blow in an eternal war, not just a fix for Adam's sin. The New Testament reinforces this, with passages like Colossians 1 verses 16 to 20 describing Christ as the one through whom all things were created and reconciled, suggesting a restoration of a creation that had been disrupted. But what if Eden itself echoes something even older? Ancient Hebrew traditions, buried in mystical commentaries like the Zohar and other Kabbalistic texts, speak of a primordial light, a creation before the rebellion, before the world became void. These traditions, though esoteric, suggest a garden of pure light, the blueprint for all that followed. Genesis 1's opening, where God's Spirit hovers over the waters, implies a world submerged in chaos, not an empty void. This hidden timeline suggests our story is an echo of an older one, a war to erase the memory of a perfect creation. The serpent wasn't just reclaiming territory, it was trying to extinguish what was and what will be again. Isaiah 65 verse 17 and Revelation 21 verse 1 speak of a new heaven and new earth, hinting that God's act of creation in Genesis was not the first but a restoration of a prior order. This original light, hidden within humanity, makes you the ultimate target in this timeless war, as the serpent seeks to thwart God's plan to restore his creation. This perspective transforms Genesis. God isn't merely a creator but a restorer, a king reclaiming his domain. The 6 days of creation were a divine counter-invasion against ancient darkness. Humanity wasn't made for passive bliss. Adam was God's response to a celestial rebellion, the governor of a reclaimed province, tasked with extending God's kingdom. Your purpose is to stand on the front lines of this divine restoration. This truth illuminates Scripture, explaining the Old Testament's violence, the New Testament's urgency, and the constant warnings of a spiritual enemy. 1 Peter 5 verse 8. Christ's sacrifice wasn't just a pardon. It was the victory that secured creation forever. The cross, as described in Ephesians 6 verse 12, was a triumph over principalities and powers, tying directly to the cosmic war that began before Eden. The deepest truth lies in God's character.